won't tell you guys my story or anything, but other than a little filler. I recently called a Christian call-in line. I was driving on the highway and had seen the sign, so I figured I would call. I'm an atheist, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I figured I would call and just see why they believe what they believe. And eventually we got to the topic of slavery, because that's kind of one of my main points that I try to push. But the answer that he had gave me was they were bond servants, not slaves.
Okay.
And I was confused because I had never really heard this response before.
Mm-hmm.
So my thing was, I don't think that you beat bond servants. I was just wondering what your guys' response to that would be.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure, because it could be that bondservant is just a nicer sounding term for slave. Mm-hmm. I think Phil looked it up earlier.
Yeah, the definitions were, I mean, it was, so not, I think one of the first definitions was of servitude or slave. Like, it was like right then and there. And so it was, I don't know, I was trying to find some differentiation between a slave and the bondservant.
I think maybe the bondservant has to do with how you got to be a slave. It's got something to do with you're working off your debts, and so you decide to be owned by this other person. But it is a very delicate distinction, and I've pulled up a page at ironchariots.org on slavery. Which lists a number of good Bible verses about slavery in the Bible. Exodus 21, verses 20 through 21, talk about how the Bible regulates the beating of slaves and states that the owner will not be punished as long as the slave takes at least 2 days to die.
Yeah, which is really messed up.
Right. A few verses later, in 28 through 32, it says that if you negligently let your bull gore somebody to death, then you have to be killed according to the laws of crime and punishment, unless that person is a slave, and then you just have to pay back the master. So there's more of these on this page, but I think the point is either they are glossing over the really horrible things that they did to the slaves, and the bondservants are a different thing with a different set of rules, or they're just putting a more polite word on it to not talk about it.
Were they substituting bond servants for slaves, but they were still saying that they were subject to those rules? Like is that?
Yeah, that's how you kind of put it.
Does that make it better? Like, does that?
Right.
Like, that word doesn't change the treatment.
I'm sure as you beat somebody to death and it takes just exactly 49 hours so you're in the clear, it's very comforting to have them tell you, hey, it's okay, man, you're just a bondservant, not a slave.
I don't...
All right, well,
I don't understand how that made it better.
Okay.
The topic that I bring up. But,
thanks for calling.
Thank you guys for... I appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah, I don't understand that. Like, if they, unless they were referring to something else or something that didn't pertain to those rules of treatment, but just substituting the word but saying that those still apply, it's still horrible. Like, there's nothing that makes it better. It's like,
it's not a good look.
They're bond servants, so
I think they're just
cool.
Counting on the fact that people won't know what that means and say, oh, well, I guess he knows what he's talking about.
I guess.
But that's our show.